The bell above the door jingled as little Olivia stepped into the brightly lit toy store, her eyes wide with excitement. Shelves stacked with dolls, games, and stuffed animals surrounded her, each one a promise of endless fun. But before she could take another step, a store clerk approached, her smile quickly fading. "I'm sorry, but you need to leave," the clerk said coldly, glancing around as if hoping no one would notice. Olivia's heart sank. "But why?" she asked, gripping her mother's hand. The clerk hesitated, then muttered, "We don't serve people like you here." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes as she turned to her mother, who took a deep breath, her jaw tightening. They left in silence, unaware that within hours, the store's manager and the rude clerk would come to regret their actions in a way they never expected. As Olivia and her mother walked out of the toy store, the little girl clutched her mother's hand tightly, confusion clouding her innocent face. "Why did she tell us to leave, Mommy?" Olivia asked softly. Her mother, Sarah, took a steadying breath before kneeling down to meet her daughter's eyes. "Sometimes, people judge others unfairly because of things they don't understand. But that doesn't mean they're right." Sarah knew there was only one person who could handle this the right way. Without another word, she took out her phone and dialed a number. Inside the toy store, the clerk felt a twinge of unease. She had done what she thought was best to keep the store's reputation, as she often told herself. But just as she was about to return to her duties, the front doors swung open again. This time, a tall man in a tailored suit stepped in. His presence commanded attention, and the store manager, who had been in the back office, rushed forward immediately. The clerk paled when she saw who it was. "Mr. Carter, I didn't expect you today," the manager stammered. James Carter, the owner of the toy store chain, scanned the room, his sharp eyes searching. And then he saw her, his daughter Olivia, standing just outside the entrance with Sarah. His jaw tightened. He turned to the clerk. "Did you just throw my daughter out of my own store?" His voice was calm, but there was a dangerous edge to it. The color drained from the clerk's face. I didn't know she was your." James cut her off. "And if she wasn't my daughter, would that have made it okay?" His voice carried through the store, and the other employees and customers fell silent. The clerk fumbled for words, but there was nothing she could say. James took Olivia's hand and led her back inside. "This store was built to bring joy to every child," he said firmly. "If anyone working here doesn't believe that, they don't belong here." The manager quickly stepped in. "Sir, I assure you, we'll handle this situation immediately." James nodded, then knelt beside Olivia. "Sweetheart, this is your store too. You belong here, just like anyone else." Olivia smiled, her confidence returning. Sarah squeezed James's hand, pride shining in her eyes. That day, not only did the store learn an unforgettable lesson, but Olivia did too. She learned that standing up for what's right can change the world, one step at a time. The store fell silent, the weight of James Carter's words hanging in the air. The clerk's face burned with shame as she looked down, unable to meet his gaze. The other employees, who had watched the scene unfold, exchanged nervous glances. No one had expected this. James stood tall, his hand still resting on Olivia's small shoulder. "This isn't just about my daughter," he continued, his voice steady but firm. This is about every child who walks through those doors. If a single child feels unwelcome here because of the way they look, then we have failed at what this store was built for." The manager quickly nodded. "You're absolutely right, Mr. Carter. We'll make sure this never happens again." But James wasn't finished. He turned back to the clerk, his expression unreadable. "Tell me something," he said. "Why did you do it?" The woman hesitated, swallowing hard. I thought it was best for the store," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want any trouble." James studied her for a moment, then shook his head. "The only trouble you caused was your own. And the truth is, you didn't just turn away my daughter today. You turned away a little girl who just wanted to play, to dream, to feel like she belonged." Olivia tugged at her father's sleeve, her big brown eyes full of curiosity. "Daddy, is she going to be in trouble?" James sighed, kneeling beside her. "What do you think, sweetheart?" Olivia looked at the clerk for a long moment. Then she surprised everyone by walking up to her. "It hurt my feelings when you told me to leave," she said honestly. "But do you think maybe you can learn not to do that to other kids?" The clerk's eyes widened. She had expected anger, maybe even revenge. But here was this little girl, offering something else entirely: understanding. I think I can," the woman said, her voice shaky. James stood up. "Then prove it." He turned to the manager. "She keeps her job, but under one condition. She's going to lead a new initiative, diversity and inclusion training for all employees. And she's going to personally make sure that every child who walks in here is treated with kindness and respect." The manager blinked in surprise, but quickly nodded. "Yes, absolutely, Mr. Carter." The clerk looked up, startled. "You'd give me another chance?" James glanced at Olivia, then back at the clerk. "My daughter just taught me that sometimes people need a chance to change." A slow, uncertain smile crossed the woman's face. "Thank you. I won't let you down." James turned to Olivia, scooping her up into his arms. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's pick out any toy you want." Olivia's face lit up. "Even the big castle set?" James chuckled. "Even the big castle set." As they walked through the store, Sarah took James's hand and squeezed it. "That was a good thing you did back there." He kissed Olivia's forehead. "She did it first." Meanwhile, the clerk stood by the register, watching them. For the first time, she saw things differently. Not just as an employee protecting a store, but as a person who could help make it a place where every child felt at home. And from that day forward, she did just that. The following week, the store felt different. The bright displays and colorful shelves remained the same, but something deeper had shifted. Word had spread about what happened, and customers, especially parents, took notice. Some returned because they admired how the situation had been handled. Others came out of curiosity. Was it true that the owner's daughter had been turned away in her own father's store? But the biggest change came from within. Marissa, the clerk who had once sent Olivia away, now had a new responsibility. She was no longer just a cashier. She was leading the store's first ever inclusivity and kindness initiative. It was a fancy name for something simple: treating every child with the same joy and excitement, no matter what they looked like. At first, she wasn't sure how to start. But one afternoon, as she arranged stuffed animals on a shelf, she saw Olivia standing nearby. looking at a doll with curly brown hair like hers. Marissa hesitated, then took a deep breath and walked over. "That's a great choice," she said gently. Olivia looked up, a smile spreading across her face. "She looks like me," she said, hugging the doll. Marissa felt a lump in her throat. "She does. And she's beautiful." Sarah, who had been watching nearby, gave Marissa a small nod of encouragement. That moment was small, but it was the first step. As days passed, the toy store became a place where every child felt welcome. Marissa and the other employees took extra care to greet every family with warmth. They made sure their shelves displayed dolls, books, and toys that represented all backgrounds. Parents noticed, and so did the kids. One afternoon, a little boy hesitated at the entrance. His mother nudged him forward, but he shrank back. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "They'll be nice here." Marissa spotted them and walked over with a warm smile. "Hey there, welcome. Would you like to check out our new superhero section?" The boy's eyes widened. "You have superheroes that look like me?" Marissa nodded. "We sure do." Slowly, he stepped inside, his small hand gripping his mother's. And just like that, another child knew they belonged. One evening, as James locked up the store, he turned to Marissa. "You've done a good job," he said. She smiled, but her eyes were full of emotion. "I never knew how much a toy store could mean to a child," she admitted, "or how much harm I almost caused." James nodded. "We all have things to learn, even me." He glanced at Olivia, who was busy helping a younger child pick out a teddy bear. "But if we're willing to listen, we can make things better." Marissa took a deep breath. "Thank you for giving me a second chance." James smiled. "Thank my daughter." As they stepped outside, Olivia ran up and took her father's hand. "Daddy, do you think we can open more stores like this?" James laughed. "You want me to build more stores?" Olivia nodded eagerly. "So more kids can feel happy when they walk in." James looked at his daughter, so young yet so wise. He squeezed her hand. "You know what? That's a great idea." And so, what started as a painful mistake turned into something much greater, a movement. A toy store that had once turned away a child became a place where every child belonged. And thanks to Olivia, it was only just the beginning. Months passed, and the toy store became known for more than just its wide selection of toys. It became a symbol of inclusivity and kindness. Families of all backgrounds felt welcome, and children who once hesitated at the entrance now ran in with bright smiles. One afternoon, James Carter stood near the register, watching Olivia help a younger boy choose a toy car. He felt a swell of pride, not just for his store, but for his daughter, who had taught him a lesson far greater than any business strategy ever could. Sarah walked up beside him, nudging his arm. "She's got a good heart," she said. James nodded. "She reminds me every day that the most valuable thing we can build isn't a business. It's a better world for our kids." At that moment, Marissa approached. "Mr. Carter," she said, her voice carrying a hint of nervous excitement. "I wanted to say thank you again, not just for keeping me on, but for helping me see things differently." James gave her a kind smile. "I didn't do that, Marissa. Olivia did." Marissa glanced at the little girl, who was now laughing with a group of children by the stuffed animals. "She's going to change the world someday," she said. James smiled. She already has. Outside, the sun cast a golden glow over the store's sign. But inside, the warmth came from something far greater, the feeling that every child, no matter their background, had a place where they belonged. And that, James knew, was the greatest success of all.